Assalamu alaikum guys. So if you have ever struggled with understanding Muhammad Iqbal's work, his philosophy, his thought, then this video is for you. I spent the past several months studying Iqbal's work, in particular his prose, and in particular his reconstruction. And I can tell you, he's one of the most difficult authors or difficult thinkers to understand. It's a challenge, but it's one well worth pursuing because there's so much you can learn from Iqbal and so much you can take from his work and apply it to our times. I realized very early on that this is going to be a challenge, so I had to come up with a strategy to really understand his work in a very short period of time. And that's what I'm going to share with you in this video. There's 3 keys that I'm going to share with you which are going to help you to access Iqbal's work, and not only Iqbal's work, but any philosophical thinker, any thinker, historical thinker, period. But before we get into this, make sure if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell. This will help you stay up to date with upcoming content and also, inshallah, help get this video out to more people. Unfortunately, that's just the way the algorithm works. So what are these keys? The very first thing I realized very early on, the first key is I'm not going to be able to understand Iqbal unless I can contextualize him within his specific time. So the socio-political context of his time was essential for me to understand. And once I understood this context, many of Iqbal's ideas, the thrust of his thought started to make sense. What was his context? In a nutshell, he lived in colonially occupied subcontinent. The Muslims were oppressed by colonial forces, and this was his specific context. He wanted the Muslims to rise and to overcome this challenge of colonialism. Once I understood this naturally led me on to what I refer to as his internal challenge. So the colonial powers were his external challenge, which was the impetus for his thought. But then there was also the internal challenge, this fatalism which was present within the Muslims of the subcontinent at the time. This suspension of, yeah, it is what it is, there's nothing we can do, and let it be. Let us be occupied, let us be oppressed, we just leave it all to Allah and we're not going to do anything. This is a key Islamic principle anyway. Yes, you rely upon Allah, you trust upon Allah, but you also tie your camel, as the Prophet ﷺ has told us to do. But the Muslim, the mindset at the time was not just complete suspension and let it just be. And instead they were focusing on, again, another sort of Sufi idea that was present in the subcontinent, and I'm sure it's present in elsewhere too, which was this idea of fana, to lose yourself, to dissolve yourself in Allah. Forget the world. It's just about me and Allah, and my objective, my purpose is to just completely dissolve away in the divine. This created a mindset, and does create a mindset of indifference. I don't care about what's happening in the world. Doesn't make any difference to me. When in fact, if you read Iqbal's work, and this we'll probably touch upon in another video, where one of his most beautiful concepts is this idea of prophetic consciousness that he shares, compared to mystic consciousness. Where if you look at the Prophet's journey, or all of the Prophets, their journeys, they move towards Allah only to return back to this world and to do significant work in the path of Allah. But anyway, we'll touch upon this maybe later on or in another video. So going back to the first key, which was understanding his socio-political context, which was colonial occupation, and then understand was the external challenge, then the internal challenge, which was fatalism present amongst the Muslim community and how to overcome this. Once I understood this context of Iqbal's, everything else started to fall into place. His idea of khudi, his other concepts of time, his thoughts on science and Islam, etc. It all started to come together. And this leads me on to the second key, which was understanding Iqbal's core concept. This is, again, for any thinker, when you're studying any thinker, realize that every thinker has a core idea or a core set of ideas which are central to their philosophy or thought, and everything else revolves around those core ideas. Same was the case with Iqbal too. Iqbal had a core idea, which was his concept of khudi, selfhood. And if you look at his poetry, you look at his prose, everything revolves around this core, this center. And remember, this center, so let me just put this into context for us. The challenge, the obstacle was Muslims being oppressed, colonized, and the internal challenge was this fatalism present amongst the Muslims, this attitude of just suspension, whatever, giving up. So for him to overcome this, Iqbal's emphasized the idea of khudi, the development of the self. This was very powerful. And we have to remember, Iqbal was a very well-read individual when it came to Western thinkers and Eastern thinkers. So he had seen the work or read the work of the existentialists. He studied the work of Nietzsche. He writes about Nietzsche, he speaks about Nietzsche. And you see some of Nietzsche's influence in Iqbal's work too. We see Iqbal really focusing in on the self, almost going down the route of the existential thinkers in the West. However, in Iqbal's case, he had Islam, and Islam as a worldview is comprehensive. So obviously his philosophy or his concept of the self and his emphasis on developing the self was going to be far more profound compared to anything the existentialist philosophers have produced in the West. So it's going back, and I know I'm digressing, but going back to the point, his core concept, and this is key number 2, discover the core concept of any thinker you are studying. Iqbal's core concept was the concept of the self, his idea of khudi. And this, for my dissertation, what I focused on, one of the elements I focused on was really unraveling how all of his other concepts in regards to time, science, etc., all of them revolved around this central concept. And all of his other ideas were there to facilitate his khudi. And by the way, this my thesis or my dissertation is going to be published. It's going to be amended, and we're going to work on it a bit more and then publish it as a booklet for Sapiens Institute this year, inshallah. You can support this, inshallah, by clicking on the link in the description box below, and all of our other projects, inshallah, at Sapiens as well. So check that out by clicking the link below. That was the second key. Once I realized what Iqbal's central idea was, and I started to see the patterns and how all of his other ideas and concepts were revolving around this central idea, and they were there to support this central idea, his other concepts and ideas started to make sense. I saw why he was thinking the way he was thinking, why he was articulating and constructing certain ideas and arguments the way he was. It all started to make sense. The third key, just going on to the third key, which was essential for me, was to read other academics on Iqbal. This was essential because, and especially if you're looking at certain aspects of his thought, say you're looking at Iqbal's concept of time, or his concept of khudi, or his ideas regarding Islam and science. Look up what other academics have written about Iqbal in regards to these specific topics. So say you're looking at time, look at what other academics have said about Iqbal's concept or idea of time. And that specific area you're looking at, say time for example, don't just look at one academic, try to find 2 or 3, because they'll have varying thoughts in regards to Iqbal's concept of time and how they understand it. And if you study all of them, it'll help you construct your own idea or your own understanding of Iqbal's concept of time. So this was essential as well, reading other academics on Iqbal and then bringing all of that information together. And once I did these 3 things and I returned to reading the reconstruction, it was so much easier to understand. I was able to grasp and contextualize and understand what was going on, understand and even articulate his arguments. And again, this will also be in a course format. Normally, not only will we have a booklet at Sapiens, we'll also have a course on something related to Iqbal's thought, inshallah, this year. So stay tuned for that too, inshallah. So just to summarize, brothers and sisters, no matter who you're studying, what thinker, philosophy you're studying, apply these 3 keys and you'll see a huge shift as far as, how you're able to understand and how quickly you're able to understand that particular individual's thoughts. Number 1, understand the socio-political context of the individual, the context within which the individual exists and is functioning within. Number 2, try to isolate the core idea of any given thinker, because that's going to help you really understand the overall thought as a whole. Number 3, try to find and read academics on that specific thinker. So in the case of Iqbal, for example, you have Anne-Marie Schemel, I think that's how you say her name. She's written Gabriel's Wing, which is, one of the most well-respected academic pieces on Iqbal. Many would consider it the academic piece of work that one needs to study if you want to understand Iqbal. Mustanzir Mir has some very interesting pieces and articles on Iqbal, which sort of overall give you a good gist and understanding of his core concepts and ideas. Definitely want to check out as well. And there's many others. So yeah, those are the 3 things, brothers and sisters. If you apply these 3 keys to any thinker that you're grappling with, that you're studying, you'll be able to understand their work better. And furthermore, as a bonus, if you like, it will help you take and extract the most profound ideas and concepts of that specific thinker and apply them to your time. And that's what I tried to do in the end of my thesis with Iqbal, was take what we can from Iqbal, and apply it to our context. In particular, his concept of the self, khudi, because I believe this concept of self, this recognition of the self, especially in our postmodern age, which does deny, the true essence or understanding of the self, which is that we're not just a physical being or body, and denies any objective understanding of the self to the degree where you can be whatever you want to be. We can definitely take from Iqbal and his concept of the self, as Muslims in particular, and start to apply that to within our time, within our context. And that's something I'm going to be doing within that course that we launch at Sapiens, inshallah. And inshallah, it will also be a part of that booklet that we produce on Iqbal too. But again, like I said, brothers and sisters, if you have watched this video thus far, may Allah bless you guys. Subscribe, click the notification bell. Sorry about my fasting brain, I'm stumbling over my words today, but do that inshallah, and also support the work inshallah. We have 9 key publications coming this year, including the publication Iqbal, but you can find out more about that by clicking on the link in the description box below. May Allah bless you guys, and I'll speak to you guys next time. Assalamu alaikum.